Hello, my name is Gabriela Rivera, and I will talk about Rogelio Salmona as part of the ARC 170B final project. Rogelio Salmona was born in Paris on April 28, 1929. His father was Spanish and his mother French. Both were Jewish, so due to political tensions in 1934, his family decided to move to Bogotá, Colombia. Salmona grew up in Teusaquillo, an area of Bogotá characterized for having brick Fox Tudor houses, which would be a strong influence in his career later on. His father decided to send him to Paris in 1948 while he was still studying architecture, but he returned home in 1957 to teach architectural history at the Universidad de los Andes. In fact, Salmona was a participant of the rebirth of the city of Bogotá after its degradation from guerrilla attacks. Salmona attended Universidad Nacional de Colombia, where he studied architecture for 3 semesters. For a decade, he worked with Le Corbusier in several projects, including the one in Chandigarh. And during his time in France, he also interned with Jean Prouvé, an architect and metal worker, and also studied art with Pierre Francastel at the Sorbonne. Once he was back to Colombia, he continued studying architecture and obtained his degree from Universidad de los Andes in 1962. In 2003, he became the first Latin American architect to win the Alvar Aalto medal. Throughout his life, Salmona referred to several individuals and styles that influence his architectural perspective and signature. Those include Le Corbusier, from whom he acquired the sense of processional navigation of space; Louis Kahn, who inspired his use of circular geometry and very specific materiality; Pierre Francastel, who influenced his social approach in architecture; and, as Salmona mentioned, Professor Francastel enlightened me about the integral relationship between architecture and society, and how architecture can express poetic aspects of a society most profoundly. Alvar Aalto, who influenced the emphasis on vernacular tradition; pre-Hispanic architecture, which inspired building forms through the creation of canals and courtyards; and Islamic architecture from North Africa and Spain, which influenced some aesthetic elements such as pierced screens and water channels connecting small round fountains. Some of the concepts that Salmona explores in his buildings include pure geometry, modularity and materiality, continuity between culture and nature, and terra-temporal architecture. For the most part, his design approaches tend to be very experimental, social, and poetic. Torres del Parque is a residential multifamily complex which was built between 1965 and 1970. It is a 30-story building with about 300 apartments. And an interesting fact is that Salmona lived there since 1970. One of the concepts explored in Torres del Parque is the sense of continuity, which is reflected in the openness to the public and the way the building blends with the city. And some of the goals include recreation, conservation, and integration of city components. And as Salmona mentioned, he intended to create a sense of unity for Torres del Parque. At the same time, they have a transformative nature and different perceptions depending on the place it is seen from the city. Some of the features in this building include exposed brick and subtle curved profiles, stepped balconies, duplex apartments, and small rooms for working-class families. Here we can see the site plan and some of the interior plans for the apartment units. The Virgilio Vargas Public Library was built between 1999 and 2001. Its entrance is across a plaza that connects the central courtyard and a fountain. This library fulfills more than its programming because it becomes a place for human interaction and leisure. Some elements for vertical circulation include ramps and stairs. Some of the features in this building include a processional pathway, a bridge that accommodates water, a stairway, brick and cast-in-place concrete, horizontal windows with views to the park, roof vaults and large circular openings, and sawtooth roofs. We can see in the images there's a lot of influence from Le Corbusier and Louis Kahn. Here we can see the site plan and the first floor plan. Casa en Rio Frio was actually Salmona's weekend home. It was designed with the help of his wife, and it was built in 1997. This project merges the natural landscape with the house itself, and Salmona got some inspiration from a pre-Hispanic poem that says, "When I enter my home, I enter the earth, and when I leave my home, I ascend to heaven." Some of the features in this house include the transversal exterior circulation that divides the public and private areas inside the house, as well as a channel that works as an axis through which the three courtyards align, and visual and spatial continuity based on the brick vaults and the exterior stairways. Here we can see the floor plan and a model in axonometric perspective. As mentioned before, Salmona was a prominent figure in the redesign of urban spaces in Bogotá, Colombia. He always intended to create interaction of residents despite the circumstances. He also assigned an architectural identity to Colombia by exploring the concept of modularity and material texture. I consider that Rogelio Salmona should be part of the architectural history canon because his architectural practice always revolved around humanistic practices, creating a long-lasting connection between society, culture, and nature. As he mentioned, architecture must establish a symbiotic relationship between its existential, cultural, geographic, and historic needs. I hope this presentation was insightful for the attempts to decolonize the canon. Thank you for listening.